On our agenda now, we are in the President's Report section. I will start with the Inuit Kanatami report. Start just by saying it's great to be in the same room with everyone again. It's been nice to have that familiar feeling of working together across Inuit Nunavut through the ITK, and definitely reinvigorates me in the work that I do. The last year and a half has been quite a difficult place to function, especially in working from home, trying to lead our organizations with all of the different considerations for staff, for being able to meet with others. And I know that for me, in my role as ITK President, it's been hard to reach out and connect to Canadians and talk about Inuit priorities in the way that I was able to do previously, and also to be able to lobby federal ministers or meet with high-level officials. A lot of the work happens not just in the meetings, but also in the meeting spaces. When we come together, we have sidebar conversations, we talk through issues. And so we have persevered in spite of not having a lot of those opportunities that have driven a lot of the relationships and a lot of the great work that has happened over the past 6 years. Over this time, ITK adapted its organizational operations to work intensely on COVID-19, including advocacy in relation to the health sector, food security, the economy, the airline industry, as well as research and communications. This included daily, followed by weekly status updates to the board about activities, challenges, and solutions related to COVID-19 response and recovery. We held these meetings via Zoom, and we were able to work together and to bring solutions that were happening in one particular Inuit region to the entirety of Inuit leadership. So I thank all regions for the time and effort that you, either as political leaders or your staff, put into those COVID updates and those COVID calls. In the beginning, there were just so many questions, and it was great to be able to work through these issues, knowing that we were all on the same page and that we could all learn from one another as we work towards COVID response for Inuit across Inuit Nunavut and across Canada. ITK has worked to ensure a distinctions-based approach to federal public health policy and advocated from the start of the pandemic for consideration of Inuit as a high-risk group in federal and provincial territorial response planning. In fall of 2020, ITK called for vaccine prioritization for Inuit. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization adopted this recommendation, and the first batch of vaccines arrived in Inuit communities in December 2020. These are considerations that we wouldn't have ever imagined possible even a short time ago. The idea that Canada had prioritized Indigenous people, and especially focused on Inuit Nunavut and Inuit Nunavut communities, is a testament to all of our leadership and our drive to ensure that Inuit are heard and understood in the political landscape in Canada, also in relation to healthcare and healthcare inequities. The people making the decisions and people recommending the decisions to the Prime Minister and other ministers in government understand health inequity in a way that I don't believe previous governments have. And that bodes well to our further efforts towards infrastructure development and further funding for healthcare and mental health care. The Government of Canada invested approximately $130 million in Inuit-specific supports through the Indigenous Communities Support Fund and other funding mechanisms. These funds provide Inuit leadership with the flexibility needed to design and implement community-based solutions to prevent, prepare, and respond to the spread of COVID-19 within their communities. It has been used for a wide variety of measures, including food security-related activities. The ability for the Government of Canada, and especially Indigenous Services and Minister Mark Miller, to allocate funds directly to Inuit leadership and at the sole discretion of Inuit leadership in how to spend those funds shows the clear support that the federal government has towards a distinctions-based approach and a respect for self-determination of Inuit. In previous years, under previous leadership, those funds probably would have been flowed directly to provinces and territories in which Inuit live, and then Inuit would have been at the mercy of those particular jurisdictions on whether or not there would be any Inuit specific considerations with those funds. I'm proud of the Inuit specific response and hearing about all the amazing things that happened during COVID to ensure that Inuit were safe, that were directed by Inuit leadership within landfill regions and also within institutions such as Tapiriit in Canada. The pandemic has reinforced how essential the aviation industry is to Inuit Nunavut, and ITK advocated for federal support to ensure airlines serving Inuit Nunavut were able to continue providing critical services amid sweeping stay-at-home orders and a halt on non-essential travel. In August of 2020, the federal government announced $75 million in funding for Northern Airlines and an additional $174 million if needed. Finally, ITK worked with the Inuit regions and the federal government to support COVID-19 public health directives, such as physical distancing, mask wearing, and to promote vaccination. I'd like to still urge everyone who has not been vaccinated to get fully vaccinated, as it is the most effective way to protect yourself, your friends, your family, your coworkers, children in our local schools and daycares, and all vulnerable populations, including our elders. This is something we do not only for ourselves, but also for our Inuit communities. And it's something that we hope to see through to the end. Getting fully vaccinated also reduces the overall pressure on hospitals so that others can get the care that they need. We have seen that our people are more vulnerable to COVID-19 than many other populations in Canada. It's therefore all the more urgent for ITK to continue focusing on helping end the longstanding inequities that make our people more vulnerable to COVID-19, including vulnerability caused by the housing shortage and the limited number of shelters in our communities, poverty, poor telecommunications infrastructure, and then other respiratory illnesses such as tuberculosis. The past year was eventful for ITK outside of COVID-19 as well, and our staff have continued to adapt and complete many of the deliverables of the ITK strategy and action plan that was passed last year. Of these highlights, I'm quite proud of the work that Inuit have done in relation to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, which received royal assent in June 2021. This historic legislation was co-developed with the ITK, the Assembly of First Nations, and the Métis Nation. Canada is the only nation to have developed and passed legislation that seeks to implement the rights affirmed by the UN Declaration. This is also an opportunity to close statutory policy gaps that contribute to human rights violations against Inuit. ITK successfully negotiated the inclusion of key provisions that will enable us to push for the establishment of an Indigenous Human Rights Commission. The Act creates obligations for the federal government to align federal laws and policies with the rights affirmed by the UN Declaration. And it also obligates for the government to develop an action plan within 2 years that is intended to pave the way for the full and effective implementation of those rights. The effectiveness and efficiency of federal processes used to implement the act will determine whether or not it achieves its intended purpose. We have seen that when such processes are overly inclusive, they quickly become disorganized, unfocused, and often fail. We will draw on lessons learned from similar initiatives to influence how the act is implemented. We have had challenges when the federal government decides that it is going to lump rights holding institutions along with many other groups that have an interest in the area but are not central. And that is one of the key issues that we hope an Inuit Nunavut policy will fix, but also our continued focus on a distinctions-based Inuit-specific approach to federal work. ITK took an important step this past year to reduce food insecurity. In July 2021, ITK released the Inuit Nunavut Food Security Strategy. The strategy's actions advance Inuit-driven solutions for improving food security and creating a sustainable food system in Inuit Nunavut. The strategy was developed through the Inuit Food Security Working Group. It provides the evidence-based base needed to effectively lobby for new food security measures. We're now using this document within the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee to support changes to programs, policy, and legislation that are necessary to improve food security. ITK continues to prioritize preventing violence against Inuit women and girls. ITK helped with the drafting of the National Inuit Action Plan on Murdered and Missing Inuit Women and Girls that was released by ITK and Iqaluit in June. The action plan identifies actions that we know are needed for curbing violence against Inuit women and girls, such as new federal legislation supporting community coordinated responses for combating violence in Inuit and other Indigenous communities. We know from the US, for example, that a federal Violence Against Women Act in that country has been pivotal for promoting and funding resources and initiatives that help curb violence against Indigenous women and girls. No such national legislation exists in Canada, and that will be part of the ongoing advocacy that we bring to the federal level in the implementation of the National Action Plan. The action plan also identifies innovative solutions needed to ensure that women and children are able to access shelters or transition housing when they're not able to in their home communities. ITK also continues to work on other major priorities through the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee. In the past year, we have met 3 times as the Inuit Crown Partnership table, once with the Prime Minister and twice with 5 to 7 federal ministers. This includes the co-development of a federal Inuit policy. We hope that this will be one of the first orders of business in this new government, as it is in the final drafting stages. On infrastructure, ITK worked closely with Inuit regions to develop Tier 1 priority infrastructure projects and highlighted that through a report that was widely distributed prior to the federal budget. We saw $4.3 billion provided in the federal budget for Indigenous infrastructure, and $517.8 million was allocated directly to Inuit through the Inuit self-determining process. It was wonderful to be a part of the discussions yesterday that led to the ITK board resolution determining how those funds will be spent across Inuit. We also continue to work on the implementation of the National Inuit Suicide Prevention Strategy. We are now in year 3 of a 10-year allocation of $5 million per year for suicide prevention activities across Inuit Nunavut and wherever Inuit live, that is led by Inuit land claim regions. We also continue to work through the National Inuit Committee on Health and other subcommittees of the National Inuit Committee on Health to ensure that suicide prevention remains one of the key priority areas of ITK and its work. We also have worked in post-secondary education, and there was a $1.475 million grant that was announced very recently with the MasterCard Foundation to pursue the Inuit Nunagat University. We look forward to working with Inuit Nunagat regions in pursuing this dream. And we had one of our first outreach sessions, discussion sessions on how to proceed just 2 weeks ago. We also have done quite a bit in relation to research and building self-determination and research and implementing the National Inuit Strategy on Research. In June 2021, after more than 2 years of negotiations, ITK supported the launch of the Canada Inuit Nunagat United Kingdom Arctic Research Program. This program includes a single call for research proposals for projects connected to Inuit Nunagat, and they will be funded by Canada and the UK. This investment, I believe, is over 80 million. This international research program is an outcome of the National Inuit Strategy on Research. The UK government was aware of the strategy, and after approaching ITK, insisted to Canada that it be used to guide the development of this particular research program. And in the response for the calls to these research funding allocations, all research proposals had to have an Inuit partner within the particular projects, which is a development that we want to see more of in responses for research calls in Inuit Nunagat. We also have been working with ArcticNet and created an Inuit Nunagat call for research projects, and that program was successful in the first iteration of these particular calls for proposals in June 2021. Our ᓄИqaluit department has also been doing quarterly research briefs, and in the past year we have released briefs on drinking water in Inuit Nunagat, access to broadband in Inuit Nunagat, and also have worked on Inuit food security issues in relation to just a general understanding of where we are. Also, something that was monumental in this past year was the appointment of Mary Simon as Governor General. And I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in the selection committee that was convened by the Prime Minister. And I was hoping that Mary Simon would be able to join us here in Iqaluit. She was unable to travel, so I've invited her to the next ITK board meeting, which she will make every effort to attend. But it was something that I was fortunate to be a part of and was very pleased with the end result. Also, thank you to NTI for the support letter for Mary Simon, as that was referenced throughout proceedings, as the show of unity and support for Inuit from somebody like Mary Simon. I want to thank all of you for your well wishes and congratulations on my election results, and thank you so much for the support that I've received from all of you in the work that I've done over the last 6 years and try to serve Inuit and try to do my best to implement the resolutions in the direction of the ITK Board of Directors. I'm really excited about the next 4 years. I think we have made incredible progress, but so much work is left to do. So I look forward to continuing to implement the ITK Strategy and Action Plan, to implement the resolutions of the Board of Directors and the AGM, and continue to hear Inuit across Inuit Nunagat, and no matter where Inuit live, to try to do my best to represent Inuit at the national level. I always think of myself as a person who convenes meetings, a person who tries to explain our decisions and push for changes that in Inuit Nunagat that we all know are necessary on behalf of all of you. And Inuit unity to me is at the center of what ITK stands for and what ITK exists for. And I'll continue to always try to build Inuit unity and to understand what the national perspectives are in the way that I articulate those perspectives wherever I may be in serving all of you. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and if there are any questions in relation to this report, I'll open the floor now for any questions or comments. Rebecca?
Just wanted to make a comment that it was a very proud moment when Mayor Simon was installed as Attorney General, not only for Inuit, but Inuit girls. And she's a role model for Inuit girls that they can be anything they want to be. I was interviewed by British Broadcasting Corporation, mainly about her installment, but they were so interested in Inuit. After the interview, they asked if they can keep my number on file so they can interview me in the future. Just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am also glad and honored that you were re-elected. The term Inuit Nunavut includes the ocean, the sky, the land, what's under the land. When we use that phrase, we talk about the land, the home of Inuit. We're not just only on the land, we're also on the ocean. When we talk about this term, maybe we could possibly look at another phrase.
The other thing, thank you very much for that. It was a good report. On the health sector, healthcare, I think the focus on building better facilities in the South is a good attempt to accommodate Inuit needs for healthcare. But I think people in St. John's, Edmonton, Ottawa, Montreal, they don't travel 2,000 miles or 4,000 kilometers to get healthcare. We do. And I think the push should be that better healthcare facilities should be in the north, in the Arctic. Hospitals shouldn't be a 3-day trip away. I mean, that made sense 75 years ago. But today, I think that we have to put in a bigger, more aggressive push nationally to build better healthcare facilities in each of the Inuit regions. You know that MRIs and very specialized healthcare services require fiber optics and stuff for better speed and required speed. But we are sending Inuit patients, Inuit injured, to already full capacity health facilities in the South. And then they cry for 4 days lining up because they're in emergency in Montreal General Hospital or in Ottawa, and wait and wait. Already the trauma of leaving home, especially for the elderly, we hear it from every region over and over, especially for the unilingual Inuit. Healthcare is a human right. As much as we need housing and food security, we should have access and demand access in the regions. We've been passive for too long. There is no national health care organization per se. It's us. It's you, every one of us in here. So I just think that should be a priority. I read what you wrote, and thanks for sending it to us, and I was listening to you. But I find that us, Nunavut is doing the same. When we spoke to our brothers and sisters from Iqaluit last night, that they're investing heavily down south too. We're looking at that as well. But the heavy investment is not in the north, where the very people, the very loved ones that are leaving for healthcare. So I just want to express that, and I do appreciate your leadership and a good report. Thank you.